Layla, a 11-year-old girl, had always been full of life and curiosity. But her world changed forever after a tragic accident left her in a coma for 5 long years. While her body lay still, something happened that no one could have ever predicted. Layla woke up with a shocking memory. She had heard a terrifying conversation while she was in a coma. Hurt, confused, and scared, Layla tried to make sense of it all. But when she told her doctor what she remembered, it set off a chain of events that no one could have imagined. How did a little girl like Layla end up overhearing such a dark secret? And what happened next that led to the people responsible being brought to justice in a way no one saw coming? Stay tuned to find out. But before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today, and if Layla's story of courage and resilience speaks to you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The soft hum of medical equipment filled the air in room 307 of Mercy General Hospital. Sunlight filtered through partially drawn curtains, casting a warm glow on the colorful artwork adorning the walls. Drawings of butterflies, rainbows, and stick figure families brought life to an otherwise sterile environment. At the center of it all lay Layla Johnson, a small figure dwarfed by the hospital bed she'd called home for the past 5 years. Danielle Johnson sat in her usual spot beside her daughter's bed, her fingers gently intertwined with Layla's motionless hand. The lines on Danielle's face told a story of sleepless nights and unwavering hope. She leaned forward, her voice soft but steady as she read from a worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. "Real isn't how you are made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you." Danielle's voice trailed off as she glanced at Layla's face, searching for any sign of response. The steady rise and fall of Layla's chest was the only movement, a cruel reminder of the car accident that had stolen her vibrant 11-year-old from her 5 years ago. "Oh, baby girl," Danielle whispered, setting the book aside. "I remember how much you loved this story. You'd beg me to read it every night, even though you knew it by heart." She closed her eyes, allowing herself to be transported back in time. Memories flooded her mind. Layla's infectious laughter echoing through their small apartment, her endless questions about the world around her, the way her eyes lit up with curiosity at every new discovery. "Do you remember that time we went to the zoo, Layla?" Danielle asked, a sad smile playing on her lips. "You were so excited to see the elephants. You kept tugging on my hand, pulling me along faster than my legs could carry me." In her mind's eye, Danielle could see it all so clearly. 6-year-old Layla, her hair in 2 puff balls, practically bouncing with excitement as they approached the elephant enclosure. Mommy, look how big they are!" Layla had exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. "Can elephants fly if their ears are so big?" Danielle had laughed, explaining that elephants were too heavy to fly, no matter how big their ears were. But Layla, ever the dreamer, had simply nodded and said, "Maybe they just haven't tried hard enough yet." A tear slipped down Danielle's cheek as the memory faded. She wiped it away quickly, not wanting Layla to sense her sadness, even in her unconscious state. "You always did have the biggest imagination, baby girl," Danielle murmured. "I bet you're having the most amazing adventures in there. But it's time to come back to me now. I miss you so much." Danielle's gaze drifted to the wall covered in get-well cards and drawings from Layla's classmates. Most of them had moved on to middle school by now, their lives continuing while Layla remained frozen in time. But they hadn't forgotten her. Every few months, a new batch of cards would arrive, filled with updates on their lives and wishes for Layla's recovery. Dr. Edwards, Layla's primary physician, had explained early on that patients in long-term comas often benefited from familiar voices and touches. So, Danielle had made it her mission to keep Layla connected to the world outside her mind. She read stories, played Layla's favorite songs, and talked about anything and everything, from mundane daily activities to her deepest hopes and fears. "You know, Layla," Danielle said, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone, "I've been thinking about redecorating your room at home. I know you loved that pink princess theme when you were little, but I think you might be ready for something a bit more grown-up now. What do you think about a space theme? You always did love looking at the stars." She paused, as if waiting for Layla to respond. The silence that followed was heavy, but Danielle refused to let it diminish her hope. "Well, We can decide together when you wake up, she continued, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. I promise I won't do anything without your approval. A knock at the door interrupted Danielle's one-sided conversation. Nurse Joy, a kind-faced woman who had been caring for Layla since her admission, poked her head in. Good morning, Danielle, she said warmly. How's our girl doing today? Danielle managed a small smile. The same, Joy, but I have a good feeling about today. I really do. Joy nodded encouragingly as she entered the room to check Layla's vitals. That's the spirit. Layla's lucky to have such a devoted mother. As Joy went about her routine, Danielle's mind drifted back to the day that had changed everything. It had been a beautiful spring afternoon, much like today. Layla had been singing along to the radio, her favorite stuffed elephant clutched tightly in her arms as they drove home from her dance recital. The memory of screeching tires and shattering glass made Danielle flinch. She'd walked away with a broken arm and a concussion. But Layla had slipped into a world beyond reach, her bright spirit locked away behind closed eyelids. All done, Joy announced, snapping Danielle out of her painful reverie. Everything looks stable. Dr. Edwards will be by later this afternoon for his usual checkup. Danielle nodded gratefully. Thanks, Joy. You're an angel. As the door closed behind the nurse, Danielle turned back to her daughter. She reached out to smooth a stray curl from Layla's forehead, her touch gentle and loving. You know, baby girl, she began, her voice barely above a whisper, I had a dream about you last night. We were at the beach, building sandcastles just like we used to. The sun was shining, and you were laughing. Oh, how I've missed that laugh. Danielle's voice caught in her throat, but she pressed on. You looked at me and said, Mommy, I'm ready to come home now. And then I woke up. So, what do you say, Layla? Are you ready to come back to me? The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only response, but Danielle refused to let her hope waver. She picked up the Velveteen Rabbit, once more, determined to finish the story. As she read, her voice filled the room with warmth and love. Once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. And then, as if by magic, Danielle felt a slight pressure on her hand. She froze, her eyes darting to where her fingers were intertwined with Layla's. For a moment, she thought she had imagined it, a trick of her desperate mind. But then, Layla's fingers twitched again, more deliberately this time. Danielle's heart leaped into her throat. Layla? Baby, can you hear me? She leaned closer, hardly daring to breathe. And then, like a miracle unfolding before her very eyes, Layla's eyelids began to flutter. Oh my God! Danielle gasped, tears springing to her eyes. Layla, that's a baby. Open your eyes for Mommy. Slowly, as if waking from a deep sleep, Layla's eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, blinking against the light she hadn't seen in 5 long years. But then, they found Danielle's face. Am I? Layla's voice was barely audible, rough from disuse, but to Danielle, it was the most beautiful sound in the world. Yes, baby, it's me, Danielle cried, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. I'm here, Layla. I'm right here. Layla's brow furrowed in confusion, her eyes darting around the unfamiliar room. Where? You're in the hospital, sweetheart, Danielle explained gently, trying to keep her voice calm despite the overwhelming emotion threatening to burst from her chest. You've been asleep for a long time, but you're awake now. You're back with me. Layla's hand tightened weakly around Danielle's, fear and uncertainty clear in her eyes. Scared, she whispered. I know, baby, I know, Danielle soothed, bringing Layla's hand to her lips and kissing it softly. But everything's going to be okay now. I promise. With her free hand, Danielle reached for the call button, pressing it repeatedly. We need to let the doctors know you're awake. They're going to be so happy to see you, Layla. As if on cue, the door burst open, and Dr. Edwards rushed in, followed closely by Nurse Joy. Their eyes widened in disbelief as they saw Layla awake and responsive. Well, I'll be, Dr. Edwards breathed, a smile breaking across his face. Welcome back, Layla. The room quickly filled with activity as the medical team began their assessments. Danielle never let go of Layla's hand, providing a constant anchor as her daughter was gently examined and questioned. Through it all, Layla's eyes kept returning to Danielle, as if making sure her mother was still there. And each time, Danielle met her gaze with a reassuring smile, silently communicating years of love and devotion. As the initial flurry of activity began to settle, Dr. Edwards turned to Danielle with a broad smile. "Ms. Johnson, your daughter's awakening is nothing short of miraculous. We'll need to run some tests to assess her condition fully, but initial signs are very promising." Danielle nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She looked back at Layla, who was watching the doctor with wide, slightly bewildered eyes. "Layla," Danielle said softly, drawing her daughter's attention. "Do you remember the last thing we talked about before you fell asleep?" Layla's brow furrowed in concentration, her voice still weak as she replied, "The beach? You promised. We'd go." A fresh wave of tears spilled down Danielle's cheeks. "That's right, baby. And we will. As soon as you're strong enough, we'll go to the beach, just like I promised." As the reality of the situation began to sink in, a mix of emotions swirled through the room. Joy, disbelief, hope, and a touch of fear for the challenges that lay ahead. But for Danielle, one feeling overshadowed all others, an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Her little girl, her Layla, had come back to her. After 5 long years of waiting, hoping, and praying, her daughter had opened her eyes and spoken her name. It was more than a medical miracle. It was the answer to every silent plea Danielle had made since that fateful day. As the doctors continued their work, Danielle leaned in close to Layla, her voice soft but filled with promise. "Welcome back, my brave girl. We have so much catching up to do, but don't worry. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. We're going to face this new chapter together, just like we always have." Layla managed a small, tired smile, her eyes already beginning to droop with exhaustion. But before sleep claimed her once more, this time a healing, natural sleep, she whispered, "Love you, Mommy." And in that moment, as sunlight streamed through the window and the sounds of celebration filled the air, Danielle knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Her little girl had fought her way back from the depths of unconsciousness, defying all odds. With that kind of strength and determination, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. The road to recovery would be long and undoubtedly difficult. But for the first time in 5 years, Danielle allowed herself to truly believe in the future. A future filled with Layla's laughter, her questions, her dreams, all the things that had been put on hold for far too long. As Layla drifted off to sleep, her hand still firmly clasped in her mother's, Danielle whispered a silent prayer of thanks. The nightmare of the past 5 years was finally over. It was time for their new beginning. The days following Layla's miraculous awakening were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. The once quiet hospital room now buzzed with activity as doctors, nurses, and therapists worked tirelessly to help Layla regain her strength and assess her condition after 5 years in a coma. Layla blinked slowly, her eyes struggling to focus on the bright world around her. The sunlight streaming through the window seemed harsh and unfamiliar, and the constant beeping of machines made her wince. Danielle sat beside her, a constant presence, her face a mixture of joy and concern. "How are you feeling today, sweetheart?" Danielle asked, gently squeezing Layla's hand. Layla's voice was still weak, barely above a whisper. "Tired, everything's so loud." Danielle nodded sympathetically. "I know, baby. It's a lot to take in, but you're doing so well. The doctors are amazed by your progress." Dr. Edwards entered the room, his kind face breaking into a warm smile as he approached Layla's bed. "Good morning, Layla. How about we try sitting up a bit more today?" With Danielle's help, they slowly raised the head of Layla's bed. The young girl's face scrunched up with effort, her muscles weak from years of disuse. But determination shone in her eyes. "That's it, Layla," Dr. Edwards encouraged. "Take it nice and slow. There's no rush." As the days passed, Layla's strength gradually improved. She began to speak more, her voice growing stronger with each passing hour. Physical therapists worked with her daily, helping her regain control of her limbs. The joy of seeing Layla awake and improving was tempered only by the knowledge of how much she had missed and how far she still had to go. One afternoon, as Danielle was helping Layla with some simple exercises, the young girl suddenly froze, her eyes widening with a strange, distant look. "Layla?" Danielle asked, concern creeping into her voice. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Layla blinked, focusing on her mother's face. I remembered something from when I was asleep." Dr. Edwards, who had been reviewing Layla's chart nearby, looked up with interest. "What did you remember, Layla?" Layla's brow furrowed in concentration. "Voices. I could hear people talking, even when I couldn't move or open my eyes." Danielle and Dr. Edwards exchanged glances. It wasn't uncommon for coma patients to report vague memories or sensations, but the certainty in Layla's voice was striking. "That's fascinating, Layla," Dr. Edwards said gently. "Can you tell us more about what you heard?" Layla nodded slowly. "It was like I was underwater. Everything sounded far away, but I could still hear. People talking, machines beeping, and you, Mom. I heard you reading to me." Tears welled up in Danielle's eyes. "Oh, baby, I read to you every day. I hope you could hear me somehow." Dr. Edwards made a note in Layla's chart. "This is quite common, Layla. Many patients report similar experiences. Your brain was still processing information, even if you couldn't respond." Layla nodded, but there was a troubled look in her eyes that Danielle couldn't quite place. She decided not to push, chalking it up to the overwhelming nature of Layla's recovery. As the days turned into weeks, Layla's physical recovery continued to impress her medical team. But Danielle noticed a change in her daughter's demeanor. The initial joy and wonder of waking up were replaced by a growing anxiety. Layla became jumpy, often startling at sudden noises. She began to resist going to sleep, fighting to keep her eyes open even when exhaustion was clearly overtaking her. One night, as Danielle was tucking Layla in, she noticed her daughter's eyes darting nervously around the room. "Layla," Danielle said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "What's going on, sweetheart? You seem scared. You know you're safe here, right?" Layla bit her lip, her small hand clutching the blanket tightly. I don't want to go to sleep, Mom." "Why not, baby? Are you having bad dreams?" Layla shook her head, her voice dropping to a whisper. "No, I'm afraid of what I might hear." Danielle's heart clenched. "What do you mean, Layla? What are you afraid of hearing?" Tears welled up in Layla's eyes. "When I was asleep, I heard things, bad things." Danielle took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice calm and reassuring. "What kind of bad things, sweetheart? You can tell me anything. You know that, right?" Layla nodded, her lower lip trembling. "There were two men. They came into my room late at night. They thought I couldn't hear them, but I could." A chill ran down Danielle's spine. "What did they say, Layla?" They were talking about someone they hurt, someone they killed." The last word came out as barely a whisper, but it echoed in the quiet room like a thunderclap. Danielle felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. She struggled to keep her face neutral, not wanting to frighten Layla further. "Are you sure about this, baby? It wasn't just a bad dream?" Layla shook her head vigorously. "No, Mom. It was real. I could hear them so clearly. They thought no one could hear them, but I could. I heard everything." Danielle pulled Layla into a tight hug, her mind racing. Could this be real? Or was it a product of Layla's imagination, perhaps influenced by TV shows or movies she'd seen before the accident? "It's okay, sweetheart," Danielle soothed, stroking Layla's hair. "You're safe now. No one can hurt you here." But Layla pulled back, her eyes wide with fear. "But Mom, what if they come back? What if they find out I heard them?" Danielle's protective instincts flared. "They won't, Layla. I promise you. I won't let anyone hurt you. But we need to tell Dr. Edwards about this. Okay? He needs to know what you heard." Layla nodded reluctantly. "Okay, Mom. But I'm scared." "I know, baby. But you're so brave. We'll figure this out together, I promise." The next morning, Danielle requested a private meeting with Dr. Edwards. As they sat in his office, Danielle recounted what Layla had told her, watching the doctor's expression grow increasingly grave. This is concerning, to say the least, Dr. Edwards said, leaning back in his chair. Layla's been through a traumatic experience, and it's not uncommon for patients to have vivid dreams or confused memories after waking from a coma. But the specificity of her recollection is troubling. Danielle nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. What should we do, doctor? Should we involve the police? Dr. Edwards sighed, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Let's not jump to conclusions just yet. I'd like to speak with Layla myself. Maybe bring in a child psychologist to help us understand what she's experiencing. It's crucial that we handle this delicately. As they made their way back to Layla's room, Danielle's mind was a whirlwind of worry and confusion. She'd been so focused on Layla's physical recovery that she hadn't considered the psychological impact of waking up after 5 years. What if Layla's mind was playing tricks on her? Or worse, what if she really had overheard something terrible? They found Layla sitting up in bed, idly flipping through a picture book. She looked up as they entered, her eyes immediately filling with apprehension. "Hi, Layla," Dr. Edwards said gently, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "Your mom tells me you remembered hearing some scary things while you were asleep. Do you think you could tell me about that?" Layla glanced at Danielle, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, Layla began to recount what she had heard. "It was late at night," she said, her voice small but steady. "Most of the nurses had gone home. I could always tell because it got really quiet. But then I heard footsteps, 2 men coming into my room." Dr. Edwards listened intently, his face neutral. "What happened next, Layla?" "They were whispering, but I could hear them clearly. One of them, he had a weird accent, kind of scratchy. He said something about a job they did, how they needed to lay low for a while." Danielle felt her blood run cold as Layla continued. "The other man, he sounded nervous. He kept saying they needed to get rid of something. Evidence, I think he called it. They talked about a place in the woods, somewhere they could hide a body." Dr. Edwards's pen paused over his notepad. "A body? Are you sure that's what they said, Layla?" Layla nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm sure. They killed someone, Dr. Edwards. I heard them planning how to cover it up." The room fell silent, the weight of Layla's words hanging heavy in the air. Danielle moved to sit on the bed, wrapping a protective arm around her daughter. "Layla," Dr. Edwards said carefully, "can you remember anything else about these men? What they looked like, or any names they might have mentioned?" Layla shook her head. "I couldn't see them, but I remember the one with the accent. He called the other one Jay or Jay, and they talked about someone named Sarah. I think that was the person they hurt." Dr. Edwards nodded, jotting down notes. "You've been very brave, Layla. Thank you for telling us this. I know it must be scary to remember." Layla leaned into her mother's embrace. "What's going to happen now? Will the bad men come back?" Danielle hugged her tighter. "No, sweetheart. We won't let anyone hurt you. Dr. Edwards and I are going to make sure you're safe." Dr. Edwards stood, his face serious. "Layla, I want you to know that you did the right thing by telling us. We're going to look into this, okay? But for now, I want you to focus on getting better. Can you do that for me?" Layla nodded, but Danielle could feel her trembling slightly. "Ms. Johnson, I need to step out for a moment." "I'll be right back," he said, his voice tight with urgency. As the door closed behind him, Danielle pulled Layla close, her mind racing. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a mistake, a misunderstanding. But the details Layla remembered were so specific, so chilling in their clarity. Outside in the hallway, Dr. Edwards pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He hesitated for a moment, the weight of what he was about to do pressing down on him. But there was no other choice. He dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice came through clear and professional. "This is Dr. James Edwards at Mercy General Hospital," he began, his voice low and urgent. "I need to report a possible murder. A patient of mine, a young girl who recently woke up from a coma, has overheard information about a crime. She remembers specific details about 2 men discussing hiding a body." There was a brief pause on the other end. "I understand, Dr. Edwards. Can you provide more details about what the patient heard?" Dr. Edwards relayed the information Layla had shared. The date, the location, the name she remembered. As he spoke, the reality of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't just a medical case anymore. It was potentially a matter of life and death. "We're dispatching officers to your location immediately, doctor," the dispatcher said. "Please keep the patient and her family in a secure location until they arrive. Do not discuss this with anyone else in the hospital for now." "Understood," Dr. Edwards replied, ending the call. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Then he returned to Layla's room. As he entered, both Danielle and Layla looked up, their faces etched with worry. Dr. Edwards tried to keep his voice calm as he addressed them. "I've contacted the authorities," he said gently. "They're sending officers to talk to us. Layla, you've been incredibly brave, and I know this is scary, but it's important that you tell them everything you remember, okay?" Layla nodded, her eyes wide. "Are they going to find the bad men?" Dr. Edwards sat down next to the bed. "They're going to do everything they can to figure out what happened. But right now, our job is to keep you safe and help you remember as much as you can." Danielle squeezed Layla's hand. "We're right here with you, baby. You don't have to be afraid." As they waited for the police to arrive, the tension in the room was palpable. Danielle tried to distract Layla with a book, but the young girl's attention kept drifting, her eyes darting nervously to the door. Finally, there was a knock, and two plainclothes detectives entered the room. They introduced themselves as Detective Maria Martinez and Detective John Thompson. "Hi, Layla," Detective Martinez said, her voice gentle. "We heard you have some important information for us. Can you tell us what you remember?" Layla looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, Layla began to recount her story once again. As she spoke, Detective Thompson took notes, his face serious. "The man with the accent," Layla said, her voice growing stronger as she remembered more details. "He sounded angry. He kept saying they needed to be more careful, that they almost got caught last time." Detective Martinez leaned forward. "That's very helpful, Layla. Can you remember anything else about the accent? Was it from a specific country or region?" Layla frowned in concentration. "It was kind of rough, like his voice was scratchy, and he pronounced some words funny, like he said thing instead of thing." Detective Thompson nodded. "Sounds like it could be a Cockney accent from East London," he murmured to his partner. As Layla continued to share what she remembered, her fears seemed to give way to determination. It was as if finally being able to tell someone in authority had lifted a weight from her shoulders. "They talked about going back to Willow Creek," she said, "to make sure everything was hidden properly. They said they had to do it before the rainy season started." Detective Martinez exchanged a glance with her partner. "Layla, you're doing great. I know this is hard, but can you tell us anything else about Sarah? Did they mention her last name or anything about her?" Layla's brow furrowed. They said she was nosy, that she asked too many questions, and something about her job. I think she worked for a newspaper." The detective's eyes widened at this information. Detective Thompson quickly jotted something down in his notebook. As the questioning continued, Danielle watched her daughter with a mix of pride and concern. Layla was being so brave, but Danielle could see the toll it was taking on her. The young girl's hands were shaking, and her voice grew more strained with each revelation. "I think that's enough for now," Dr. Edwards interjected, noticing Layla's distress. "Layla needs to rest. This has been a lot for her to process." The detectives nodded understandingly. "Of course," Detective Martinez said. "Layla, you've been incredibly helpful. We're going to do everything we can to look into this information." As the detectives prepared to leave, Detective Thompson turned to Danielle and Dr. Edwards. "We'll need to post an officer outside Layla's room for her protection, and we'll need to speak with hospital security about access to this floor." Danielle felt a chill run down her spine. "You think she might be in danger?" Detective Martinez's face was grave. "We can't rule anything out at this point, but don't worry, we'll make sure Layla is safe." As the detectives left to make arrangements, Danielle turned to her daughter. Layla's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Mom," she whispered, "what's going to happen now?" Danielle sat on the edge of the bed, pulling Layla into a tight embrace. "I don't know, baby, but I promise you, we're going to get through this together. You're safe here, and I'm not going anywhere." Over the next few days, the hospital buzzed with activity. Detectives combed through security footage, focusing on the nights around the time Layla mentioned. They interviewed night shift staff, cross-referencing schedules with Layla's recollections. In a small conference room turned temporary command center, Detective Martinez pinned photos and notes to a large corkboard. "Okay, let's go over what we have so far," she said to her team. Detective Thompson stood up, pointing to a hospital floor plan. "Based on Layla's statement, we're focusing on the nights between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., particularly around the staff shift change at midnight. We've identified 3 nights in the past 5 years where there were gaps in the security footage for Layla's floor." Another detective, Lisa Chun, chimed in, "I've been going through hospital records. There are 2 male nurses who were on shift during those nights. One of them, a James Marlowe, has a history of disciplinary issues." Detective Martinez nodded. "Good work. What about the accent Layla mentioned?" "We've got a linguistic expert analyzing the description," Thompson replied. "Preliminary assessment suggests it could be a Cockney or East London accent. We're cross-referencing with immigration records for hospital staff and frequent visitors." As the team continued to piece together the puzzle, a young officer burst into the room, slightly out of breath. "Detectives, I think we found something. A cold case from 5 years ago. A missing person report for Sarah Brennan. She was a journalist working on an expose about corruption in the local healthcare system. She disappeared just 2 days before Layla's accident." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Detective Martinez was the first to speak. "This could be our break. Chin, I want everything we have on Sarah Brennan's case. Thompson, reach out to her family, see if they're willing to talk to us. And someone get me the hospital administrator on the phone. We need to know who had access to Layla's room 5 years ago." As the team dispersed, each focused on their tasks, Detective Martinez couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of cracking open something big. A missing journalist, corruption in the healthcare system, and a little girl who heard more than anyone could have imagined. It all seemed too coincidental. Hours turned into days as the investigation deepened. The detectives worked tirelessly, following every lead, no matter how small. They interviewed dozens of hospital staff, pored over years of records, and dug into the backgrounds of anyone who might have had a connection to Sarah Brennan or access to Layla's room. One evening, as the sun was setting outside the hospital windows, Detective Martinez sat with Layla and Danielle, updating them on the progress. "We're making headway," she assured them. "Layla, the information you've given us has been invaluable. We've identified a few persons of interest, and we're closing in on the truth." Layla, looking tired but determined, asked, "Have you found Sarah?" Detective Martinez's face softened. "Not yet, sweetheart. But we're not giving up. Your bravery has given us a chance to solve a case that went cold years ago. You've given Sarah's family hope." As they talked, a commotion in the hallway caught their attention. Detective Thompson burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "We've got a match on the accent," he said breathlessly. "And you're not going to believe this. It's linked to a former hospital board member, a man named Edward Blackwood." Detective Martinez stood up quickly. "Blackwood? Wasn't he mentioned in some of Sarah Brennan's notes?" Thompson nodded. "Exactly. And here's the kicker. He resigned from the board suddenly, right after Sarah disappeared. Claimed it was for personal reasons, but we found some discrepancies in his financial records from that time." The pieces were starting to fall into place. Detective Martinez turned to Layla and Danielle. "We need to move quickly on this. For your safety, we're going to transfer you to a secure location. Officer Davis will escort you." As Layla and Danielle prepared to leave, the young girl looked up at the detectives. "Are you going to catch the bad men?" she asked, her voice small but brave. Detective Martinez knelt down to Layla's eye level. "We're going to do everything we can, Layla. You've given us the key to unlock this whole case. You're a hero. You know that?" Layla managed a small smile, clutching her stuffed elephant tightly. As they left the room, escorted by Officer Davis, Detective Martinez couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration for the young girl's bravery and determination to bring her justice. Back in the command center, the team worked through the night, piecing together the final strands of evidence. Financial records, phone logs, and witness statements were scrutinized, each adding another layer to the emerging picture of corruption and murder. As dawn broke, Detective Martinez stood before her team, her eyes tired but filled with resolve. "All right, people, this is it. We got enough for warrants. Edward Blackwood and James Marlowe are our primary suspects. Thompson, you lead the team to Blackwood's residence. Chun, you're with me at Marlowe's place. Remember, these men are potentially dangerous and definitely desperate. Let's bring them in safely and get justice for Sarah Brennan and Layla. The next few hours were a blur of activity. SWAT teams were mobilized, warrants were served, and in a coordinated operation, both Blackwood and Marlowe were taken into custody. As they were brought into the station, Detective Martinez couldn't help but think of Layla, the young girl whose extraordinary ability to hear while in a coma had set this whole chain of events in motion. In the interrogation room, Edward Blackwood, once a respected member of the community, sat with his head in his hands. His lawyer sat beside him, looking grim. Detective Martinez entered, her face a mask of professional calm. Mr. Blackwood, we have some questions about your relationship with Sarah Brennan and your activities on the night of July 15th, 5 years ago. Blackwood looked up, his eyes bloodshot. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of Sarah Brennan. Detective Martinez laid out photos on the table, security camera stills, financial records, and finally, a picture of Layla. Mr. Blackwood, we have a witness who overheard a conversation between you and James Marlowe in Mercy General Hospital. A conversation about hiding a body and covering up evidence. Would you like to revise your statement? The color drained from Blackwood's face as he stared at Layla's photo. That's impossible. She was in a coma. She couldn't have heard anything. And yet, she did. Detective Martinez replied coolly. Every detail she provided has checked out. We know about the corruption Sarah was investigating. We know about the money you and Marlowe were skimming from hospital funds. And we know what happened when Sarah got too close to the truth. Blackwood's composure crumbled. In the adjacent room, James Marlowe was already confessing, hoping for leniency. As the full story emerged, Detective Martinez felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but at such a high cost. Hours later, exhausted but triumphant, Detective Martinez made her way to the safe house where Layla and Danielle were staying. As she entered, she saw Layla sitting up in bed, her mother beside her. Layla, Detective Martinez said softly, I have some news for you. We caught the bad men. They're going to go to jail for what they did. And it's all thanks to you. Layla's eyes widened. Really? You found them? Detective Martinez nodded, sitting on the edge of the bed. We did. And there's more. Because of what you heard, we were able to find out what happened to Sarah. Her family finally has answers after all these years. You've helped bring them peace, Layla. Tears welled up in Layla's eyes, a mix of relief and overwhelming emotion. Danielle pulled her daughter close, her own eyes glistening. I'm so proud of you, baby, she whispered. As Detective Martinez watched this tender moment, she marveled at the strength of the human spirit. Layla, who had already overcome so much, had found the courage to speak up and bring criminals to justice. It was a reminder of why she had become a detective in the first place, to help people like Layla, to be a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. In the days that followed, the full story emerged in the media. The tale of a brave young girl who, while trapped in a coma, had become an unwitting witness to a terrible crime. The corruption scandal rocked the local healthcare system, leading to widespread reforms and increased oversight. Sarah Brennan's family finally had closure, able to lay their loved one to rest after years of uncertainty. They reached out to Layla and Danielle, expressing their deep gratitude for Layla's role in solving the case. As for Layla, she faced a long road of recovery, not just physically from her coma, but emotionally from the trauma of what she had experienced. But with her mother's unwavering support and the help of counselors, she began to heal. One sunny afternoon, weeks after the arrests, Detective Martinez visited Layla at home. The young girl was sitting in the backyard, enjoying the fresh air and sunshine. How are you doing, Layla? Detective Martinez asked, sitting beside her. Layla smiled, a genuine, bright smile that lit up her face. I'm doing better, and I started a new hobby, painting. It helps me relax. Detective Martinez nodded approvingly. That's wonderful, Layla. I'm so glad to hear you're doing well. You know, you've inspired a lot of people with your bravery. As they sat there, enjoying the peaceful afternoon, Detective Martinez couldn't help but feel optimistic about the future. Layla had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger. Her journey was far from over, but she had already left an indelible mark on the world. The case of the hospital whispers, as it came to be known, would be remembered not just for the corruption it uncovered or the cold case it solved, but for the extraordinary circumstances that led to its resolution. It was a testament to the power of the human spirit, the importance of speaking up, and the unexpected ways in which justice can be served. As Detective Martinez bid farewell to Layla and Danielle, she carried with her a renewed sense of purpose. In a world that could sometimes seem dark and unjust, there were still moments of light, moments when a small voice could make a big difference. And for Detective Martinez, that was reason enough to keep fighting for justice, one case at a time. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink. Layla sat on the warm sand, her toes wiggling in the cool water as gentle waves lapped at her feet. Beside her, Danielle watched with a mixture of joy and wonder, still marveling at the sight of her daughter awake and enjoying life after so many years of uncertainty. "Mom," Layla said softly, her eyes fixed on the setting sun. "Do you think the nightmares will ever go away completely?" Danielle wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders, pulling her close. "I think they'll fade with time, sweetheart. You've been so brave, and you're getting stronger every day." It had been 3 months since Layla had woken up from her coma and inadvertently helped solve a years-old murder case. The initial euphoria of her awakening had given way to a complex emotional landscape as Layla grappled with the trauma of what she had overheard and the challenges of adjusting to a world that had moved on without her. The nightmares had started almost immediately after Layla was moved out of the hospital. She would wake up screaming, her mind filled with fragmented images of shadowy figures and whispered threats. Danielle would rush to her side, holding her close and whispering words of comfort until the terror subsided. "I had that dream again last night," Layla admitted, her voice barely audible above the sound of the waves. "The one where I can hear them, but I can't move or speak. It feels so real." Danielle's heart ached for her daughter. She had watched Layla struggle with these nightmares for weeks, feeling helpless in the face of her child's fear. But they had found help in the form of Dr. Rachel Chen, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery. "Remember what Dr. Chen taught you?" Danielle prompted gently. "When you have that dream, what can you do?" Layla took a deep breath, her brow furrowing in concentration. I can remind myself that I'm safe now, that the bad men are in jail, and they can't hurt me or anyone else anymore." "That's right," Danielle encouraged. "And what else?" "I can think about my happy place," Layla continued, a small smile forming on her lips. "Like right here, on the beach with you." Danielle felt a surge of pride. Despite everything she had been through, Layla was showing remarkable resilience. The therapy sessions with Dr. Chun had been challenging at first. Layla had been reluctant to talk about her experiences, often retreating into silence when the memories became too overwhelming. But slowly, with patience and gentle encouragement, Dr. Chen had helped Layla find ways to process her trauma. They had worked on breathing exercises to help manage anxiety and visualization techniques to combat the nightmares. Layla had even started keeping a journal, filling its pages with her thoughts, fears, and hopes for the future. "You know," Danielle said, her voice thoughtful, "when you were little before the accident, you used to talk about wanting to be a superhero when you grew up. Do you remember that?" Layla nodded, a wistful expression crossing her face. "I wanted to fly and save people from bad guys." "Well," Danielle continued, "in a way, you did become a hero. Your bravery helped solve a crime and brought justice to Sarah's family. That's pretty amazing, don't you think?" Layla was quiet for a moment, considering her mother's words. "I didn't feel very brave," she admitted. "I was so scared when I told the detectives what I heard. But I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I could help." This sentiment had been a turning point in Layla's recovery. As she began to understand the impact of her actions, she started to view her experience not just as a source of fear, but as something that had made a positive difference in the world. One day, During a therapy session, Layla had surprised both Dr. Chun and Danielle by expressing a desire to help other children who had been through traumatic experiences. "Do you think," she had asked hesitantly, "that I could talk to other kids who were scared like I was? Maybe I could tell them that it's okay to be afraid, but that they can be brave too." Dr. Chun had smiled warmly. "That's a wonderful idea, Layla. Helping others can be a powerful way to heal ourselves too. We could look into some programs where you might be able to do that if you'd like." Since then, Layla had thrown herself into researching ways she could help. She had started by writing letters to other children in the hospital, sharing her story, and offering words of encouragement. The responses she received had been overwhelming, filled with gratitude and admiration for her courage. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the beach, Danielle marveled at how far they had come. The road to recovery had been far from easy. There had been setbacks, days when Layla refused to leave her room, paralyzed by fear of the outside world. Nights when the nightmares seemed insurmountable, leaving both mother and daughter exhausted and drained. But there had also been moments of triumph. The first time Layla laughed, really laughed. After waking up, the sound had brought tears to Danielle's eyes. The day Layla finished her first book since the accident, proudly showing off her achievement. And now, this trip to the beach, a promise fulfilled after years of waiting. "Mom," Layla said, interrupting Danielle's thoughts, "can we come back here again sometime? Maybe we could bring Dr. Chin too. I think she'd like it here." Danielle smiled, touched by her daughter's thoughtfulness. "Of course we can, sweetheart. We can come back as often as you like." As they sat together, watching the last rays of sunlight dance across the water, Danielle reflected on the strength her daughter had shown. Even in the darkest times, when the weight of her experiences seemed too heavy to bear, Layla had been a source of light and hope. There had been a particularly difficult day, about a month after Layla had woken up, when the reality of all she had missed during her coma had hit hard. Layla had discovered that her best friend from before the accident had moved away, and that the world had changed in ways she couldn't have imagined. "It's not fair," Layla had sobbed, curled up in Danielle's arms. "I lost so much time. Everything's different now. How am I supposed to catch up?" Danielle had held her daughter close, her own heart breaking. "Oh, baby," she had murmured, "I know it's not fair, but you haven't lost everything. You're here now, and we have so much time ahead of us. We'll face it all together, one day at a time." That day had been a turning point. Layla had begun to look forward, focusing on the future rather than dwelling on what she had lost. She had thrown herself into her physical therapy with renewed determination, pushing herself to regain the strength and coordination she had lost during her years of inactivity. Now, as they sat on the beach, Danielle could see the results of that determination. Layla's movements were more fluid, her balance improving day by day. She still tired easily, but her stamina was increasing steadily. "Look, Mom!" Layla exclaimed suddenly, pointing towards the water. A pod of dolphins had appeared, their sleek bodies arcing gracefully through the waves. "Can we go closer?" Hand in hand, they walked to the water's edge, letting the cool ocean lap at their feet as they watched the dolphins play. Layla's face was alight with wonder, her earlier melancholy forgotten in the face of this natural spectacle. As they stood there, Danielle was struck by a sudden realization. Despite everything they had been through, the years of uncertainty, the fear and trauma that had followed Layla's awakening, they were here, together, sharing this beautiful moment. Life was precious, and they had been given a second chance to embrace it fully. "Layla," Danielle said softly, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've been through so much, but you keep pushing forward. You're the bravest person I know." Layla looked up at her mother, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You never gave up on me, even when I was asleep for so long. And now you're helping me be brave." They embraced, the sound of the waves providing a soothing backdrop to their shared emotion. As they pulled apart, Layla's face took on a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said slowly, "I've been thinking about something Dr. Chin said, about how sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to keep going, even when we're scared." Danielle nodded encouragingly, curious to see where Layla's thoughts were leading. Well, Layla continued, I think I want to do that. Keep going, I want to go back to school, even though it scares me. And I want to keep writing letters to other kids who are going through hard times. Maybe my story can help them be brave too. Pride swelled in Danielle's chest. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. We'll take it one step at a time, okay? And I'll be right there with you, every step of the way. As the last light faded from the sky, stars beginning to twinkle overhead, Layla and Danielle made their way back up the beach. They had brought a small picnic dinner, and they sat on a blanket, enjoying sandwiches and fruit as they listened to the rhythmic sound of the waves. Mom, Layla said between bites, do you think we could do something special for Detective Martinez and her team? To thank them for everything they did? Danielle smiled at her daughter's thoughtfulness. That's a lovely idea. What did you have in mind? Layla's face scrunched up in concentration. Maybe we could bake them cookies? Or, we could make a big thank you card, and I could draw pictures of all of them as superheroes. Laughing softly, Danielle nodded. I think they'd love that. We can work on it together when we get home. As they finished their dinner and packed up their things, Danielle couldn't help but feel a sense of optimism about the future. Yes, there would still be challenges ahead. Layla's recovery, both physical and emotional, was an ongoing process. The nightmares might not disappear completely, and there would likely be difficult days ahead as Layla continued to adjust to her new reality. But there was also so much hope. Layla's desire to help others, her determination to face her fears, and the bond between mother and daughter that had only grown stronger through their ordeal. All of these things pointed towards a brighter future. As they walked hand in hand back to their car, the sound of the waves fading behind them, Danielle made a silent promise to herself and to Layla. They would face whatever came next together with renewed strength and love. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would always remember this moment, this perfect, peaceful evening on the beach where healing had truly begun. Layla paused as they reached the car, turning to look back at the ocean one last time. Mom, she said softly, I'm really glad we came here. It's even better than I imagined all those years ago. Danielle felt her heart swell with love. Me too, sweetheart. And this is just the beginning. We have so many more adventures ahead of us. As they drove home under a canopy of stars, Layla drifted off to sleep, a small smile on her face. Danielle glanced at her daughter, marveling at the strength and resilience she had shown. Whatever the future held, she knew that together, they could face anything. As Danielle tucked Layla into bed that night, she marveled at her daughter's compassion and maturity. Despite everything she had been through, Layla's heart remained open and full of empathy for others. Good night, my brave girl, Danielle whispered, kissing Layla's forehead. Sweet dreams. Layla smiled sleepily. Good night, Mom. I love you. As Danielle closed the door quietly behind her, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead might not always be easy, but with Layla's strength and their love for each other, she knew they could face anything that came their way. Together, they would continue to heal, to grow, and to embrace the precious gift of life they had been given. As the weeks turned into months, Layla's recovery continued to progress. Her physical therapy sessions became less frequent as she regained her strength and coordination. The nightmares, while not completely gone, were less intense and occurred less often. Layla had learned to use the coping techniques Dr. Chin had taught her, often waking from a bad dream and calming herself before the fear could take hold. One sunny Saturday morning, Danielle knocked gently on Layla's bedroom door. Sweetheart, there's someone here to see you. Layla looked up from her journal, curiosity sparking in her eyes. As she made her way downstairs, she was surprised to see Detective Martinez standing in the living room, a warm smile on her face. Hello, Layla, the detective greeted her. How are you doing? Layla smiled shyly. I'm doing better, thank you. What brings you here? Detective Martinez sat down, her expression turning serious but kind. Well, I have some news I wanted to share with you in person. We've finally closed Sarah Brennan's case completely. Thanks to your help, we were able to recover. Well, we were able to bring Sarah home to her family. Layla's eyes widened, understanding the weight of what the detective was saying. She reached for her mother's hand, squeezing it tightly. "There's more," Detective Martinez continued. "Sarah's family has asked to meet you. They want to thank you personally for helping to solve the case. But only if you feel comfortable with that, of course." Layla was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then, with a determined nod, she said, "I'd like to meet them. I've been thinking about Sarah a lot, and I want her family to know how brave I think she was." The meeting was arranged for the following weekend. As Layla and Danielle pulled up to the small community center where they had agreed to meet, Layla felt a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Inside, they were greeted by Detective Martinez, who introduced them to Sarah's parents, Michael and Linda Brennan, and her younger sister, Emily. There was a moment of awkward silence before Linda stepped forward, tears glistening in her eyes. "Layla," she said softly, "we can't thank you enough for what you've done. You've given us the closure we've been seeking for so long." Layla, feeling a lump in her throat, managed to speak. "I'm so sorry about Sarah. I wish I could have woken up sooner. Maybe then." Michael shook his head, kneeling down to Layla's level. "No, sweetheart. You have nothing to be sorry for. What you did was incredibly brave. Sarah would have been proud of you." As they talked, sharing memories of Sarah and discussing the impact of the case, Layla felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. She had been carrying the burden of this knowledge for so long, and now, surrounded by people who understood, she felt a sense of peace settling over her. Emily, who was close to Layla's age, asked hesitantly, Do you think Sarah knew we never gave up looking for her?" Layla thought for a moment before answering. "I think she did, and I think she would want you to know that she never gave up either. She was trying to help people right until the end." The meeting lasted for several hours, filled with tears, laughter, and a shared sense of healing. As they were preparing to leave, Linda handed Layla a small box. "This was Sarah's," she explained. "It's her journal from when she was your age. We thought you might like to have it. Sarah always wanted to inspire other young girls to be brave and stand up for what's right. In a way, through you, she's done just that." Layla accepted the gift with trembling hands, feeling the weight of its significance. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll treasure it." On the drive home, Layla was quiet, lost in thought. Finally, she turned to her mother. "Mom, I think I know what I want to do when I grow up." Danielle glanced at her daughter, curious. "What's that, sweetheart?" "I want to be a journalist like Sarah," Layla said with conviction. "I want to help people by telling their stories and uncovering the truth." Danielle smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and a touch of concern. "That's a wonderful goal, Layla. It can be a challenging path, but I know you have the strength and determination to do it." As the years passed, Layla continued to grow and heal. She returned to school, gradually catching up with her peers, and even excelling in some subjects. The nightmares became rare occurrences, and while the memory of what she had overheard never fully faded, it no longer held the same power over her. On her 18th birthday, Layla sat on the beach with her mother, watching the sunset just as they had done years before. She held Sarah's journal in her lap, its pages well-worn from years of reading and finding inspiration. "I got accepted," Layla said quietly, a smile playing on her lips. Danielle turned to her daughter, joy lighting up her face. "The journalism program? Oh, Layla, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you." Layla leaned against her mother's shoulder, feeling a sense of contentment wash over her. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You never gave up on me, not when I was asleep, and not when I was struggling to find my way after waking up." Danielle wrapped an arm around her daughter, pulling her close. "And I never will, sweetheart. We're in this together, always." As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Layla reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The fear and trauma that had once threatened to overwhelm her had been transformed into a source of strength and purpose. She had found her voice, and she was determined to use it to make a difference in the world, just as Sarah had tried to do. "You know," Layla said thoughtfully, "I used to think that bravery meant not being afraid. But now I understand that true bravery is feeling the fear and moving forward anyway." Danielle nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears of pride. "That's exactly right, my brave girl. And you've shown that kind of bravery every single day. As they sat there, the sound of waves lapping at the shore and the first stars twinkling overhead, Layla felt a profound sense of peace. The road ahead might hold challenges, but she was ready to face them. With her mother's unwavering support, the memory of Sarah's courage, and her own hard-won resilience, Layla knew she could handle whatever life had in store. The little girl who had once overheard a terrible secret had grown into a young woman determined to bring light to the darkest corners of the world. And as she looked out at the vast ocean before her, Layla felt a sense of limitless possibility. Her story, she realized, was just beginning. Layla's story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments, the truth can find its way to the surface. Her courage didn't just help solve a mystery. It proved that even the smallest voice can bring justice and hope to the world. If Layla's story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done if you were in Layla's shoes?